Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on CCI MACD strategy structure. My name is Oleg Havlish and I'm a software developer here at FxPro. Just before we begin, please take a moment to read through this disclaimer. It simply states that the material covered in this webinar is to be considered as marketing communication and not to be taken as any form of investment advice. So hopefully you understand that anything covered in this webinar shouldn't affect how you trade or don't trade, and it is simply here for educational purposes only. As with all our other webinars, we try to make them as interactive as possible. So at the top panel of this viewing software, you'll see the Q&A section. So please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section anytime during the webinar. And if the questions are on topic, I'll make sure to interrupt and answer them as soon as I can. Otherwise, any off-topic questions can always be answered at the end of the session. So this webinar will focus on CCI MACD strategy, as I mentioned before. So you'll see how the strategy decides how to trade and when to trade. You also see the advantages of using them, and also see the understanding the implementation of this strategy and exactly how to implement it using FxPro Quant Strategy Builder, and as well as hopefully see some potential avenues of improvement and how the strategy can be made better, and so on, and also how to implement them to the existing strategy. Right. Just to begin, what we'll do is just show the website. So the CCI MACD is one of the strategies in our EA library. So you can just search for it, CCI MACD. And you'll see at the moment it's not doing too well, but on average it sort of makes and loses money, sort of goes back and forward. But in this case it's just educational purpose how to develop something like this. But overall it's been downloaded 3,500 times, so it's one of our most downloaded strategies in our A library. You also have a quant template for it, so if you ever want to see the full strategy implementation, simply click on Quant Template and click on Edit in Quant, and then the entire strategy is going to be rolled out for you, and you should be able to see its full structure and then how it is been built and so on. So you always have access to that from our website. So what I'll show you exactly how it trades first. So open MT4, and you'll see this is a result of the backtest of the strategy. And the way it trades, it uses MACD in the opposite way, so essentially it's counter trending. So for it to sell, the MACD histogram has to be above 0, and for the strategy to buy, MACD histogram has to be below 0, which is usually the opposite way of the way the MACD is usually used. And also at the same time it has to combine with the CCI signal, which is Commodity Channel Index. So it sells when CCI was above 250 and then dropped below. So as it exits the extremely overbought of the CCI and MACD is bullish, it's when it sells. And in this case as well, the CCI has spiked up really high, and it didn't trade when CCI was extremely overbought. It was waiting for it to then exit this overbought region, and then it was selling. In this case, you've seen it traded quite successfully. So the overall backtest of it over the past 8 months looks relatively well, but this once again is not an indication that this strategy is particularly good. I mean, it just backtests really well. Its performance out of sample is somewhat mixed. There is one person that says they have a sound problem. Everything on this side shows that the sound works. Can anyone else say if they can hear me? Please let me know in the Q&A that you can hear me, and I'm just gonna reply to this person. They can just try to leave and rejoin. So everything seems to work here in terms of sound. All the settings show that the sound is working correctly, so hopefully there's just this one person who has sound issues. So for now I think we can carry on a bit. Right, so So this is the strategy in a nutshell. Same goes for buy trades. The CCI has to drop below minus 150, and then as it returns upwards, becomes the signal for the strategy to trade. And this is essentially what the strategy. At least this is the entry and exit signals, and the rest is the money management and management of inputs and how many trades it takes and so on. So that's so this is just the signaling, and the rest is actually implemented within the strategy itself. So whenever you backtest it or apply it on the chart, you can see that it has this parameter, whether it's going to use money management or if it's going to trade fixed lot, as well as what its stop loss to take profit, what is the maximum number of trades that it will allow to open, and how frequently they allow to open, as well as trade hour restrictions, when it will start trading, when it will end. By default, these are set to 0, so it can trade 24/7, but 24/5 rather. But you can restrict it to only trade within certain hours. So maybe optimize the strategy to work at night only, and so on. So you have at least this option within the strategy, as well as having all these inputs for MACD, fast, slow, and signal, and all the CCI inputs as well. And incidentally, it has the closing threshold. So if you have a trade open that hasn't reached the take profit or stop loss, but it has you have a buy trade, and the system went into extremely overbought, so it went into 200, then the strategy will simply close at market and will not wait for take profit or stop loss. So this is the CCI close threshold. So the system can then exit in either take profit or stop loss, or if CCI moves to one of these extreme levels, then it will just exit at market. So if it goes to 200 or minus 200, it will just exit. And the same strategy also has a trailing stop. So as the price goes up in its favor, so if you have a buy trade here, or sell trade in this case, as the price keeps going down, your profits are protected with a trailing stop loss. So it doesn't simply keep the stop loss where it originally was, but keeps moving it down as soon as the strategy is in profit. So that is also a part of the strategy. And if you see the backtest report of the backtest you see in MT4, you'll see that it does a lot of this modify. So it modifies the stop loss as the price moves in its favor, and then eventually you can see that this trade has exited at stop loss, but it has exited in profit. So the fact that the stop loss has been trailed past the entry points, and then the strategy has exited in profit, and so on. You can see for most of the trades, it does a lot of this modification. So it does a lot of stop loss trading. So it tends to exit either in with stop loss or exiting at market when conditions are met. It almost never exits with actual take profit, but nonetheless it managed to more than double the account in this backtest period. Once again, this is not necessarily the indication that the strategy is particularly profitable. It just worked well with this specific period with these parameters, and you can then test it on a demo account before applying it on live, of course. Right. So this covers most of the inputs of the strategy. So it has all these parameters that you can specify whenever you trade it. So if you have any questions about how the strategy actually works, please feel free to ask them in Q&A before we move on to its implementation. But then I guess if you don't, if there's anything unclear about how the strategy works, then once you see the implementation, it will be a lot clearer then, because you'll go through it bit by bit, and then things will become a lot clearer. Right, run our questions and we go straight to implementation. So as I said before, you can always open a built-in template for CCI MACD and you'll see the full strategy drawn out in front of you. And because it's quite complex, it actually doesn't fit into the screen, so you'll need to make sure you use the full screen mode and to see the entire strategy implemented like so. So you see here is all the inputs that you see on the chart, so not rather than the chart, or when you apply the EA onto a chart or when you backtest it, all of these are simply input nodes. So they're the nodes taken from the input section, where there's going to be a number input or a whole number input, and they're simply dragged from the input section specified values and then connected to the relevant indicators. So you take the CCI indicator from the current bar, which is just simply found in indicators, commodity channel index, which would be obviously at C, and then you specify, you link the CCI period to its period parameter like this. And then in this case, by default, it's going to be looking at the CCI at the current bar. When you also then create another instance of the CCI with the shift back equal to 1, and that will be looking at the commodity channel index at the previous bar. Then your logic becomes is implemented later on. So you have a big node, the AND node, which is found in the logic section, and you combine all these parameters for you to actually enter a buy trade. So you have five of these parameters have to be met. So first one is trade exists, which is this line. It has to check. It uses the reverse output, so it effectively checks whether that the trade does not exist. So it only produces a buy signal when there is no trade, and then that signal will carry through. So that's the first input. Then it checks that the CCI at the previous bar, CCI 1, was below the buy threshold. And the buy threshold is yet another input node that you can find right here, which is minus 150. And you compare CCI below buy threshold. You compare the value of the CCI at the previous bar with this buy threshold to check that it was below the oversold. So effectively checking that it was below the minus 150, below here. And the second check is you're confirming that it is at the current bar it is above 150. So you check if the CCI at 0 is greater than buy threshold, and you can see these two conditions are combined to check if it was below and it's now above. And the next check is your MACD has to be below 0. So this compare simply looks at the MACD indicator at the current bar and ensures that it is below 0 as your extra condition. And the final check is, of course, this ease time node, which is the node that checks if it's the right time to trade. And by default, it is disabled. So the start and end hour is set to 0. So it doesn't do anything for the system as it is, but you have the option to restrict the trading time of this strategy by specifying the start and end hour, and it is built into strategy, so you have that option whenever you trade it. So that's a simple trading signal that it derives, and for sell signal it obviously does it in the opposite way. It checks the sell threshold and then checks if it crossed upwards and exited the oversold exit the overbought region, and it's going down, and then MACD is above 0, and that will be producing the sell signal in this case. And also the exit, you have the upper close threshold and lower threshold, lower close threshold. So what you check is, once again, if the CI is above this level, then you are getting into overbought, and then you simply have the close signal, and you close all your long trades in that case. So you first of all check if your trade exists, and if your CCI goes above 200 in this case. So just to relate this back to the chart, you can see if the CCI goes above 200, above this level, then you will want to exit it, which is exactly what happened in this case. The CI went just above it, and the system just simply exits at market, even if it hasn't reached its take profit or trading stop. And this is to ensure that you're not really holding on to a buy position as your commodity channel index goes into extreme overbought, and at some point you simply choose to exit at market. And this and these two nodes specify your levels, and then that gets compared to the CCI, and the system exits whenever the signal is there. The trailing stop loss is very simple. You just have a simple trailing stop loss node from your custom function section. Simply drag it onto a chart. It doesn't have to be connected to anything. It just works every time without having to be triggered. In this case, there is just a whole number input node that allows you to then specify the value, the stop loss points, so that you specify how closely you want the stop loss to be trailed. And on the actual EA values, it appears at the bottom. You simply specify 100 by default, but you can choose to be more aggressive, so to track the stop loss a lot closer to the current price, or less restrictive, and you can make sure that the stop loss doesn't have to be too close and it's 200 points away from the price. That obviously becomes up to you, and the value, what input nodes allows you to do is to then set different values whenever you apply in a chart. And it's also useful if you trade in on multiple instruments and you want to, for example, trading USD yen, you might want to specify different values here, and setting all these input nodes allows you to configure this EA after it has been generated by the quant. There are also more inputs at the top. You'll see a greater range of them as well. So here's where we decide whether you want to trade fixed lot or whether you want to trade with money management. So when you decide, so first of all you have your buy signal, but then you check what is the setting of this true-false input variable, which is what you see whenever you apply onto a chart. So if you just find CCI in a list and we apply it on the chart, you can see use you can set it to true, and then it simply switches whether you're using this fixed lot or whether you take account equity and divide it by 1,000 and then multiply it by this number to make sure your lot is calculated automatically. In this case, you can see that the lot size has been changing. So it was starting with the near one lot, and as it was making losses, the lot size was dynamically reduced to 0.86, and as it was making profit, it was increased to 1.67 and all the way up to 2.47. You can also see it in the full backtest report that stop loss keeps changing depending whether strategy making money or losing money and so on. So this is the effect of the money management in this strategy. The stop loss keeps changing as the account equity grows or falls. And this is implemented with this true-false input from the input nodes. You specify it as true or false, and you can make sure it's true by default, and then the system checks it at the bottom. So if it's negative, so if it's false, then you buy without money management, and then you just buy a fixed lot. And if it is switched on to true, then you buy with money management, and your lot is calculated. Is a calculated lot, which comes from this calculated lots node right here, which is account equity divided by 1,000 and then multiplied by this input, and you can see this, the result of this arithmetic node just multiplied by this. So that means for a 10, or it simply means that for a 10,000 account of 10,000 USD, it will be trading one lot. And as account equity goes up and down, it will be adjusting accordingly. And if the money management is set to false, it will simply using this lots input node, and that is what's used for the buy with fixed lots. It's simply using this node right here. You can see the connection coming through all the way here. So this is the money management of the strategy, and the same goes for the stop loss and take profit. These input nodes are connected directly to the buy and sell, so you have this as input parameters as well. You control the maximum number of trades. In this case it's 4, so you can potentially have up to 4 trades open, but it doesn't do in this case. And you also have the max frequency minutes. In this case it's actually a bit redundant, because you have you only trade when there are no active trades, so you can technically even get rid of this node. You only have one trade at a time, or you can put it back and then remove this trade exist restriction, and then the system will allow it to have up to 4 trades. So here's where we come to the last point of this presentation, is how can strategy like this be improved. So you have the template ready for you, and you see its performance in our AA library. But then, how can you yourself change it to make sure it works better, or adjust it to your preference? So first of all, you can allow it to trade multiple trades by removing this extra check. It does checks if the trade exists before opening a signal. So it only buys when there is no active trade. Well, you can remove this connection, and then the system will allow to have multiple trades. And this max open trades node allows it to do it up to 4. And max frequency minutes ensures that it will not open trades any more frequently than every 30 minutes. And you can and these are linked directly into this buy and sell nodes. So you can see the connections are coming from them. Go directly there. So you specify the max open trades and max frequency minutes, and allows you to have multiple trades and potentially benefit more from greater market moves. So this is one way you can improve it. You can allow it to trade multiple trades, and change your money management calculations. So the other thing you can do is have something more complex in this place. So it's not simply looking at your account equity, but looking at account balance instead, or at your free margin and so on. So you can calculate your lots in a different way, so you can have a more complex structure in this case. And you can of course add other indicators. So for example, you can ensure that you only trade if some other indicator giving you a signal. So you can pick any indicator from the list that you have, or one of the available ones, or even custom indicator that you seem to be used to, that you're using in your current strategy. And you can just add this indicator and link it to your buy and sell nodes. Just something we can do right now. So we can simply check, for example, for ATR. We want to make sure that we only trade if we have if you have a significant move. So we can trade if ATR, average true range, is above certain value. So we can add ATR to our list, add a compare node, and let's go back to MT4 and apply ATR to the chart. And you can see, so we can potentially filter out some of the trades. So we can take ATR. It will be an indicators. It'll be average true range. So you can potentially find, let's say, we'll find a bad signal somewhere. So you can see there's relatively there's a losing buy trade here. So at this point, our ATR was quite low. So it was below 0.12. So we can potentially restrict the strategy to make sure it only trades when ATR is above 0.15. So that at least this trade will be eliminated. So this will be, let's say, a cutoff point, 0.015. We go back to quant, and we make sure that we only trade if ATR is greater equal to 0.15. Let's make sure I got the right number of zeros, and yes, I have. And then all we'll do is we'll link this compare node to our buy signal and to our sell signal. So make sure we only ever trade if we have a strong signal coming from our ATR. And we can of course make this configurable externally afterwards. We can just put a whole, we can put a number input. You can just say ATR minimum level and set this to 0.0015. Set to true, and then save the strategy as CCI MACD with ATR filter. So we'll save it, so we can now just download the strategy. And install it into MT4, so we have it in our downloads. Just cut and paste into our MT4 folder, into experts. Right, and all that is left is to restart our platform. and we'll generate a strategy and an improvement on the original CCI MACD strategy, and we'll see if that actually performs any better or worse, and see if we get the improvement we want. But in this case, I just used a trivial example, almost random indicator. I just pulled out of the list. But if you do your own analysis, you will analyze the chart, analyze the results of this trading strategy. You might come up with better results as well. So we, in this case, we backtest now CCI MACD with ATI filter, and we backtest it over exactly the same time period, of exactly the same data, and we'll see if we get any improvement in the result as well. And while it's doing, we can just go back to quant and just see what other things we can do. So we can actually set it to trade. We can actually restrict the trading hours to make sure we don't trade during news, or we only trade during the Asian session when there is less market volatility, or quite the opposite. We can ensure it only trades during European hours when there's higher market volatility, and so on, as well as adding all other indicators and restricting the max risk that it takes. We can ensure that its stop loss is set to break even as soon as it's 200 points in profit. By doing this, just simply drag and drop this node anywhere. You can also make sure it doesn't lose more than a certain amount per day. So we can have this max loss per day node, and we can drag it here, and we can set it to 5 or 10%, for example. And if we link it to our buy signal, and we put reverse output, and link it to a sell signal, and set it to reverse output as well. Essentially make sure that the system will not carry on trading if it already lost 10% during that day. So if it lost more than 10%, it will just stop. And this way we can restrict the risk that the system is allowed to take. And then, especially if it's auto trading, we can come back later and see that our account has not been destroyed by strategy if it done something wrong. You can also see some of the results coming in, how the ATR has affected the strategy. You can see that it's did not really have the desired effect. It doesn't seem to be doing too well. Actually, in fact, in this case, it's actually made the strategy worse. So then I guess using ATR was not a good example, but it requires more analysis. You can do more things, but at least you can see how something like this can be implemented. All you do is you take out the indicator and add an extra compare, and then simply link it to your buy and sell signals, and that becomes additional parameter at the end. So this becomes ATR filter, and then in your buy and sell signal, you can have that you're now additionally filtered by the ATR, and so on. And this hopefully give you a general indication how you can take an existing strategy and then improve it and build upon it, and hopefully develop something better than what we have currently available on the website. So hopefully that cleared most of the things up. So once again, if you have any questions, anything covered so far, have any questions on the strategy or its quant implementation, please feel free to ask them in Q&A. You see it overall, in this case, it had made profit, but it has done only 107 trades. I can actually save this report as CCI MACD with ATR. So you can compare it to the way the strategy used to work. So we can see it has filtered far too many trades. It only did 107 trades over this 8 months, while the original strategy did 109, and it must have filtered out a lot of the profitable trades. You can see the shape of the graph looks similar. In this case, it was doing losses in the beginning and then eventually recovered, but the system must have filtered out too many of the good trades, and actually even though it was profitable at the end, it actually was detrimental to the strategy. It removed most of the profitable trades and basically made the strategy useless. So, but the whole point of this was to see how quickly it was to implement something like this, and then to try it, and then we can see if it's a bad idea. We can simply remove this indicator and then put something else instead. And with this sort of sometimes even trial and error and optimization, you can develop the particular hopefully a much better strategy on your own based on this template or based on your existing strategies, and you can continuously improve them and test them and see if that makes it any better. So since there are no questions in Q&A so far, I think we can just wrap this up. So if you have any questions after this session is over, please feel free to send them to easupport@fxpro.com. If you have any comments or suggestions on this webinar or suggestions for future webinars, please send them to webinars@fxpro.com. And the recordings of each webinar will be found on our YouTube channel. So if you just search for FxPro Marketing on YouTube, you find our FxPro YouTube channel, and that will be the webinar playlist. We can see the recordings of all our previous webinars as well, and this recording of this webinar will be available there hopefully sometime tomorrow. And as there are no further questions, I'd just like to thank you for your time, and I hope I'll see you in some of our future webinars, and have a nice evening.